How's it going? Thralls of Metal here once again. I'm Necrotic Nick.
Hey, what's up? It's the Tommie.
And we're here with another album review. Since we ventured out into the more popular territory of reviewing Slipknot in our last video, we figured we'd give you something a little more underground on this one. So I was dicking around on Bandcamp and I found an interesting band to check out. We're going to review Carnal Tomb's new album, Abhorrent Veneration. This came out, I think, a couple months ago on Testimony Records. I believe they're based out of Germany. The band is from Germany, from Berlin, and they've been around since 2014. It's pretty much just a straightforward, old-school death metal with definitely some hints of death doom across this album.
Yeah, elements of lots of different styles of death metal and doom. And
this is only their second full length.
There was 500 copies, I believe.
Yep, only 500 copies. I think I got 480-something or something like that. You know, figured why not? Let's just check these guys out. It's a cool underground thing, and I like hearing underground music.
Yeah.
So right away, with the opening track, Putrid Flames, you get a sense of what these guys are about. It's very raw, almost kind of like Autopsy meets Grave-inspired death metal.
Some good chunky guitar tones, prominent bass right off the bat.
I really like the guitar tone. It kind of halfway balanced that, Tampa sound with a little bit thrashier guitars, and then a lot of the Swedish Stockholm sound too, with the big buzzsaw tone. Really, really good. Now, the song I thought was a little haphazard. It kind of bounced all over the place. And they seem to favor the old school blast beat, where it's just that versus like the quicker stuff you hear now.
I agree completely. And, it's really prominent because the drums are very forward in the mix.
Yeah. And the mix is definitely an issue we'll be bringing up later on. But right away, you can tell that the drums are super forward, especially the snare. The snare is loud, and it's not really a really great snap. It's almost like hitting a mattress.
It feels like it gets better throughout the album, but especially on the first track, it's hard to almost not focus on that.
Yeah, right away it's just super loud. But you have time to really absorb the rest of the album, or the rest of the song rather.
Great chunky heavy riffs.
Yeah, I mean it definitely carries it. The vocals kind of stay in sort of a mid-range growl. Doesn't really get a lot deeper or higher. But it's pretty well executed. The cadences get a little repetitive, but all in all, pretty good. It gives you just on that early 90s death metal. It's still very raw, very chaotic. There's even some punk influence in it, which is really good. Now, where I really got hooked was the title track, which is the second track.
I agree. That was a standout track for me, too.
One of the best ones on there. Groovy, heavy. It's kind of just a nice mid-tempo fucking stomp of a song.
The breakdown riff in that song was just kick you right in the ass.
Punchy, and it had once again that guitar tone very similar to a band like Grave, where it's very crunchy but also kind of dirty sounding at the same time. It's like overdrive. I fucking love how heavy it was.
What really stood out to me in this song is the solo. It was a good solo, and then into chaotic death metal, into a foot stomping breakdown. It was a killer breakdown on that.
Oh yeah, and this is where you really start getting that sense of the death doom vibe too. There's a good death doom part that reminded me of bands like Hooded Menace and Paradise Lost. Really just somber, but very melodic, very dirge-like. Just really excellent writing. I thought it's a 7-minute song, and it really didn't get old. I wasn't bored at any point through this song in particular.
I agree.
Cryptic Nebula definitely sounded very similar to this one too.
Yep.
Now the very big doomy one was Dissonant Incubation. That one is a flat-out death doom song.
Yes.
There really isn't any other element to that. There's a part where it speeds up a bit, but not much.
What stood out to me was the different vocals on that track.
Yeah.
There was they brought in another vocalist. I don't remember exactly what his name was, but it was a welcome difference in the vocals.
Yeah, you had like a higher scream. It was almost like
it was like a ghastly yelling,
tortured. Some reverb on it, so it kind of sounded like it was cavernous a bit. And it definitely added a different dynamic to the music. But at the same time, looking back, it was like, I kind of wish that element kind of popped up in the other songs, too.
I agree completely.
Not that the vocals are bad, but they kind of stick to that one note a little too much.
He did that really well.
Yeah.
His death growls are really good.
His death growls are really good. I really like this song just because it was a very much a standout track. It sounded like nothing else in the album. Moments on other songs sounded similar to this song entirely, but this entire song stayed very much in the Death Doom realm, and it was really good.
The outro of that song was very unique as well.
Yeah.
It was like a death waltz.
Yeah,
is what it reminded me.
It was really melodic too. Like, I mean, it was 100% heavier than fuck.
Oh yeah.
But it had this cool melody, and once again, I compared it to a band like Paradise Lost, because they really know how to do that.
Sure.
That slow, almost funeral march of a song, but it still stays very heavy and very riffy.
Another standout track for me was the next track, Feeding Mold. I thought that was a great track. Love the opening riff. The drums didn't feel as forward, so I didn't really get the feeling as I did on the earlier tracks. The drums, they bothered me a little bit sometimes, and it did not bother me at all on this track. It felt mixed a lot better.
Yeah, I definitely agree with you. I also like the fact that they brought up the pace on it. So you had time to, between the last track, this and Incubation, this one actually was more up-tempo. So these two songs stood very differently, so they didn't feel like they were two similar songs smashed together. It really didn't have a lot of the death doomy elements at all. It was mostly straightforward death metal, some punk-esque sounds in there too, like very Swedish in terms of the death metal sound, so there's a lot of that D-beat fucking stomp to it. Really, really, really dug that. Now, a couple of things got exposed in this mix, though, later on. There were some the lead guitars sounded uneven. There were certain songs there that sound really good, and then other songs, it would sound really thin.
Yeah. It almost sounded like there wasn't a lot of effects.
Yeah.
It was almost like just a dry Stratocaster over top of it type sound, which was really weird. It kind of hit me off a little bit.
Yeah, and it made that part sound particularly thin.
It did.
And
that happened a couple times on the album.
There's a couple times there, and then towards the last track, Sepulchral Descent, which I thought was a solid song, and then the end of it kind of goes into a death doomy breakdown, but the bass is kind of taken back in parts there, and you can actually hear the drums really clearly, and not only is the snare tone bad, but, you know, the bass drum tone was really flat.
I definitely really like the feel and the vibe of the outro, and it's the outro of the whole album.
Yeah, it's really good.
And I like the feel and the vibe of it, but just the drums sounded unmastered.
Yeah,
you know?
And that was the issue going through this entire album. The mix was uneven. Some songs would sound particularly great, like well done, like they really honed in on this one. It's like we wanted this one to sound great, and the other ones feel like they kind of glanced over parts.
Yeah,
and it kind of takes away from it, because there's a lot of great songwriting on here. Like the last track in particular, there was a slower part that almost kind of had the slightly folky echoes of early Amorphous, which I fucking love that shit, and like an incantation vibe that I really like. But again, this mix really took away from it. And I granted these guys are on a smaller label and studio time is fucking pricey and shit like that, but I feel like this mix kind of makes it suffer a little bit.
So all in all, I gave it a 2.5 out of 5. You know, that's the lowest rating I've given. It's not that I liked the album. It was good. There was good riffs. It was good songwriting. I really liked the blend of the bass and the guitar. I thought that was really well. The bass sounded really good, and the rhythm guitar sounded great. But just the drums really, it didn't settle well with me for the first couple tracks and that last outro. So just the mixing and mastering felt maybe a little bit rushed and inconsistent for me.
I give it a 3. I think it's a solid album at its core. I think the songwriting is excellent. It definitely has all the hallmarks of really good old school death. The mix definitely makes it suffer a little bit. And I would say some of the song placement, you know, there are 2 songs I can think of that kind of run together a bit because they're very similar. And the opening track really didn't set the pace particularly well, unfortunately, because you could hear kind of that rough mix already. But strong songwriting. I'm curious to see where these guys go from here, because honestly, I think it's a solid album. They just need a better mix.
I'm definitely interested to see where they go next.
Yeah. So, if you like the review, give it a thumbs up. And if you're new to the channel, sub. We do shit like this all the time.
All the time.
Catch you guys later.
Peace.